So
we
have a big group tonight, I think. So that's really exciting for both Dr. Holland and I. I know this is a hot topic and it's a great time of year for it. I guess we could talk about ourselves a little bit before we jump in, since people are hanging out anyways with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for those who don't know me, I like doing webinars for ECHN. So you may have come to one before, and I definitely see some friendly faces in the audience. My name is Dr. Lauren Young. I'm a naturopathic physician. I grew up in Hebron, Connecticut, and I practice in Manchester. And actually we've expanded to Glastonbury, West Hartford, Stonington, and Danbury as well. I work alongside my colleague who's going to be presenting with me tonight, Dr. Jalen Holland. We're both alumni from the same school, University of Bridgeport, where we both trained as naturopathic physicians. And so we thought a great topic to talk about tonight was intermittent fasting. So we do a lot of naturopathic physicians with diet, because food is amazing medicine. It's a wonderful way to help support health, and at the same time can be very complex. And fasting has been an amazing tool in my practice. And so Dr. Holland was on board with helping me pull this together, and I'm excited to share intermittent fasting with you guys tonight, the science and the research behind it. So without further ado, as it's 7:01 now, we will dive into intermittent fasting.
Great.
Thank you, Dr. Holland, for joining me tonight.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk about this topic today. And I know that there's some really good information and like you said, hot topic. So
for sure. So just so everyone knows, I know we're like, people are joining aggressively right now. Feel free, if everyone can find their little chat window in the beginning, in there, I'm not going to be able to see all the participants. So raising your hand, I won't be able to see you. But if you want to throw any questions either directly towards me or just into the group chat, I will make sure that we address them all. And if you want to wait to the end, that's fine as well. But I mean, I like a dynamic interaction. So does Dr. Holland. We both riff well together. So feel free to just throw the questions in the chat and then we'll address them as we can. Otherwise, we will probably ask everyone to stay on mute just because of logistics with that. All right, let's dive in. So what are we talking about tonight? Intermittent fasting is a really hot topic. It wasn't even a thing when I was in medical school. And so there's a lot of research behind it. We want to bring that all to you, the science behind it, the hows and whys, and things you want to be mindful of going into it. So disclaimers is that none of this is medical advice tonight. We are just giving you information to have a conversation with your clinicians and your doctors. While we all eat on our own, it's definitely a great idea to let your physician know when you're doing this, especially if you're on medication or you have other health concerns. It definitely can be an impact when it comes to intermittent fasting. Additionally, definitely don't recommend intermittent fasting for children unless you're my son, who doesn't like to always eat breakfast. He's right there. But honestly, with that, do I always make you eat breakfast? Oh yeah. Yes. And we also recommend people who are underweight or have any kind of issues with finding balance with food, or psychology wise, like an eating disorder. We want to be careful with using intermittent fasting. I really want to focus more on intuitive eating when we talk about this anyways, but you want to be careful with that. And obviously being careful if you're pregnant or lactating. So without further ado, again, recapping for anyone who's joining us, feel free to throw any questions into your chat and we will address them as they come. Dr. Holland is going to guide us into really exploring the world of fasting.
Yeah. Okay. So fasting as medicine, right? When we look at fasting and we really want to kind of utilize food as medicine, fasting could be a really important part of that kind of medicine part. I know, like we said, it was a trending thing, and a lot of the times, it was a trend that started and then a trend that just kept going. And I think it's building more momentum. And I think it's important to kind of get the tools of doing it properly, so it doesn't harm anybody or you're not depriving yourself of any kind of nutrients. So I think that's really important. And basically, intermittent fasting is a period of time of eating and a period of time of fasting. So you have absence of calorie consumption over an extended period of time. And you're basically cycling periods of eating, fasting with various methods. Today, we're going to be talking about 3 different methods, but there are many different types of methods to look out for fasting wise. So,
And
go ahead.
oh, sorry, go ahead. Do you want me to jump to the next slide or no? Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So just to give background too, like, I mean, I don't want to tell you guys when I was in med school, but it was a little while ago. And this wasn't something we were talking about. Fasting wasn't a thing back then.
Mhm.
And it was eat every 2 to 3 hours, keep your blood sugar even, don't ever get too hungry. And this is on flipping it, it's on its head. And we really look at this research, it's really, really interesting. So I'm excited to bring this to you guys and really talk about how we look at medicine and nutrition around this now.
Yeah, it's actually a really big thing. And they're finding a lot of the times that the research shows that it happened a lot in kind of our ancestral habits, because they would often have to go out and look for their food. So they would have periods of time of famine, and then when they would hunt and gather, they would have this big feast. So they would feast for days and then not eat for the rest of the week or something. So they didn't have that ability to have the food for us all the time like we do now. Especially because a majority of Americans, they consume most of their calories throughout the whole day. And even if it's smaller meals or bigger meals, and a lot of us consume our meals, our biggest meal at the evening, it basically leaves our body to not being able to repair and rejuvenate as well if we're always trying to get our body to break down the food that we're eating. So this is where fasting kind of comes into play with aids in digestion and metabolic support. It definitely is a great window of shortened eating windows, and then it's promoting your body's ability to repair and rejuvenate. And I just want to, before we go into like the background of how actually fasting works, there are certain metabolic pathways that trigger when we eat something. So we eat food and our body takes it down and breaks it into glucose. That's our endogenous diet. And during that time, our body's using that as fuel. So we're using that glucose for fuel up to maybe about 4 hours. These metabolic pathways often overlap each other, because after we break down our glucose, then we use our glucagon, which is our storage of glucose, from anywhere from 4 days to 2 days. 4 hours to 2 days. And then after that, our body's like, oh, we need more fuel. Let's tap into another gluconeogenesis, which is another metabolic pathway in our bodies that help keep our blood sugar up to utilize for fuel. And that could range anywhere from 4 hours to 42 days. So this is important because during the cycling of our glucose metabolism, if it runs out, our body needs that fuel source. So this is where it's an important play to kind of, we then utilize ketones, which is basically pulling from our fat metabolism. So we break down fatty acids and glycerin and we make up ketones, which is then our fuel source. This is what happens in fasting, which is an important process that is the key to fasting, the key to getting into that state, the key to basically using our body and utilizing that window of not eating.
And it's great. One of the questions we got is like, how can we incorporate intermittent fasting when it comes to working out? And a piece of that is a lot of times breaking down your glycogen stores is going to end up being around like the hour 14 or so, right? And I know we get into some of this later. So if you're exercising after, either to break down your glycogen stores quicker,
yeah.
And I know this is some heavy science, guys, I promise not all of it is heavy. But like then that means that you're going to be burning fat and you're going to be shifting into this different metabolically active process. And so that's, exercising in the morning after you've fasted all day or all night, that's a great time to exercise to kind of like uptick your fasting.
Yeah.
So typically people fast before they're exercising, although, I'm going to have a trainer tell me something different tomorrow, but right now that's my experience, right?
You utilize a lot of the fuel that way, so you're then going into more ketones when you're fasting working out at the end of your fast, which is something that would facilitate that process even more, the benefit of it. There are definitely different research on like whether to have a meal before you work out or you don't, but I think it goes to body, basically how you feel. You're not going to want, if you feel like you're going to faint, then please eat before you're working out. That's something that won't be beneficial. The workout won't be beneficial in the long run if it can't be.
Yeah. And so the whole concept of ketosis, we were just talking about this like literally a couple days ago. It can take anywhere from 14 hours to break down your glycogen stores to up to like several days to get fully into ketosis, where you're like having ketone bodies that are measurable. So the ketosis is a spectrum for sure. And so one of the questions is just like, I thought it took a couple of days to get into full ketosis. That is true. And you can have keto flu getting into that if you don't have enough fats and enough other things going on. And we could do a whole lecture on ketosis, which actually we did a ketogenic diet topic in the past for a lecture. We're just bringing this up is that part of how the therapeutic benefits of fasting is breaking down those glycogen stores. If thinking about glycogen and what glycogen is to glucose, glycogen is, think of it like a little like sugar store on all of your organs and in your body kind of thing. And so your body can always pull from that. So you've got this safety net of glucose, so you never have to live without it. When you break that down and clear that out, it's kind of like giving the freezer a good clean out. So you get rid of everything in the freezer or get everything out of the pantry and kind of give like a hard reset. And shifting over to ketones, even for a little bit, can kind of give you this reset of cleaning up your cells and DNA. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. So it doesn't have to be the full ketosis where you're spilling ketones in your urine and you're in full ketosis. It's just like a hard clear out of your glycogen stores.
Yeah, your brain is definitely going to be the last thing that wants to run off of ketones. So it's always going to pull glucose. Your liver is always going to pull glucose. So you're going to have those storages but that's the idea of using ketones versus keto like full on ketosis, because you're still going to use ketones because ketones are a breakdown product of fatty acids and glycogen and glycolysis, glycogen molecules. So basically you're not always going to be in that ketose state. Like it takes maybe, like Dr. Young said, it could take anywhere from 2 to 7 days to get in full ketosis, but that's not the objective.
Yeah. I mean, and let's jump into fasting, because I know you guys are all like,
yeah,
you can tell
fasting,
that Dr.
fasting.
Holland's been like studying her biochemistry hard. Yeah, I really am regretting not putting the picture of my kid looking at this big pile of cheese that she made for herself. With next lecture on ketosis, we'll definitely do that. So tell me about all the different methods of fasting. Let's hear about
so
them.
the 3 methods of fasting that we're going to talk about. Here's the first one. It's called lean gains. Basically, this is the most popular one because, this is the great one to start out with, because intermittent fasting is really going to be difficult for some people to get into over a long period of times, especially because you get hungry, so this one is going to be a 16-hour of fasting and an 8-hour window of eating. And majority of those 16 hours are ultimately when you're sleeping. So if you shorten the window of ending dinner early and pushing out breakfast, you have your 16-8 split right there. And so what this does is just prolongs the period of fasting a little bit. And they say, you could skip breakfast, eat a normal lunch, dinner, whatever you need, even snacking. Sometimes, just to start off is the idea of it's a twofold. Intermittent fasting is a twofold. It's the period of time and it's also what you eat. So if you don't change anything else of like, even if you don't change what you're eating, because we want to promote good eating and healthy foods and whole foods, then at least narrowing that window is really going to help your body break down what it needs to and really repair. So this one is the most popular one to start with.
I mean, I personally like this one the best too. I mean, the nice thing about this is who wakes up and just like isn't in the mood for breakfast, but feels like they need to.
Yeah.
It's easy enough to do that. And also who knows they shouldn't nighttime snacks, especially this time of year, right?
Yeah.
So this is like this is the nice way of just like closing that window up, right?
Yep, absolutely. And it's great because a lot of the times before we go to bed, we shouldn't be eating right before we fall asleep. A lot of the times that could lead to sugar dysregulation. It could lead to abnormal sleeping. And so a lot of the times ending it earlier than you actually go to bed is beneficial in itself. So the next one is going to be the warrior diet. So this one's going to prolong it a little bit more. You have 20 hours of fasting and you have a 4 hour of eating. So this is going to be one where you're going to go all day and all night without eating. And then your majority of all your calories that you need are going to be happening in that 4 hour split. This is going to be really good for people who socially go out to dinner or don't have time during the day and then they eat a big meal at night. At least it gives the body time to kind of rejuvenate through all that time. So you're using up all of that, glucose, and you're getting into those ketone bodies, and then you're really utilizing that fat metabolism with the warrior diet. It can be difficult and it's definitely deeper level.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then this one is the eat, stop, eat. This one is going to be where you're fasting for an entire 24 hours. So your last meal is 8 p.m. You're going to go all the way into 8 a.m. without eating. And then from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., you're still not going to eat. And so you're going to even continue it. So you're that full 24 hours of not eating. And this is going to be beneficial for you really getting that source of body, bringing back the repair cycle on that. This is also going to be really difficult. It's not recommended to do all the time. They say 2 non-consecutive days a week. Some people are worried about binging after this. And what happens is the calories that you do intake after you fast for 24 hours still is a negative net value than what you would in the 2 days that you would be eating. So there is beneficial and you are working more of that fat metabolism.
Mm-hmm. Great. And so there's a question coming up about all of these, which is, can you alternate the types of fasting? And I'm going to answer, I'll answer and then I'll let Dr. Holland answer. I would just say that like my love of intermittent fasting is really renaming it into intuitive eating. Instead of intermittent fasting, it's more just like waking up. Are you really feeling hungry? What are you feeling? Like checking in with your body. Do you have a really demanding day? Are you going to need those extra calories? Or is it a day where you're kind of already like okay with a gut rest and letting your body get more into that rest mode and recover that way? Like, I think the nice thing about this is that there's no one set, like one thing for everybody. It's just like kind of just play with your diet a little bit more and know that it's safe to go a full 24 hours without consuming calories with your doctor's advice and still taking your medication. But you could certainly that it's safe and it has some potential health benefits. And also you're also getting a lot of benefits if you skip breakfast and you just close the window of time where you're just like eating lunch and dinner and okay with that. So yes, it's great to play with different ones and listen to your body. And if you wake up one morning and you really want brunch, do it. And then other times, like going the full 24 hours could certainly have some benefits.
Yeah,
that would be my take. Dr. Holland?
Yeah, I agree with you. It's a really interesting play on fasting, where some people you could really take it to extreme, and it's hard I advise you not to take it so extreme, and definitely working with a healthcare provider to kind of manage that, because you have to maintain that if you could actually last the 24 hours, like healthy wise, for 24 hours without eating. There is definitely a workup to this. So it's not something that you're just going to start off the bat with. If you've never even fasted, don't try 24 hours right off the bat. And there is different times, different research on how often to do this, how like how to utilize it in a different way, maybe doing it once a month or once a year. It's not something that is done every week for the 24 hours.
So to triage a couple of questions, when we talking fasting, we're talking still hydrating really well. So one really important part is lots of water. Water is, I mean, there was just a great study that came out. We were just talking about like last week, that was like a 25-year study. What's the one thing you could do for yourself to like reduce the aging process? And it was like water. And you're like, I wonder how much money that study cost, but also it was worth it because I've been hydrating better. So water is still really key with this. Juice does not count. Juice is calories and you can drink a lot of carbs. So juice is not going to count for that. And so the other question was, are supplements okay during a fasting period? That's the short answer is it depends, like some are really going to be better with food. And so you may want to intermittent fast your supplements with it too. There is some research that pulsing your nutrient doses with supplements is actually really beneficial as well. So that would definitely be a question for your physician if like your specific supplements should be skipped when you're fasting.
Yeah. And coffee is you could drink black coffee too. That's not gonna, so it's like kind of keeping in that like keto state. When you get into more prolonged fasting, there's fasting mimicking diets where they just kind of concentrate on a low, like a fat based meal for that prolonged. That's something also with under a physician's care is definitely a plan to do. But yeah, so basically not consuming any calories, but so you can have your coffee but no cream.
Or I've heard like under 50 calories of cream will keep you, it's still in that kind of fasting state.
It depends on your goals. You have to definitely test, and you have to test your sugar. So if someone's, it has to do with your gut microbiome too. If you're eating something and you say you have cream with your coffee and your sugar spikes, then it's something where it's like, okay, you can't add sugar to it, but then coffee black would be better. But then some people say I have cream in my coffee and my sugar won't spike. So it depends. And then I see the herbal tea. Yeah, absolutely. Herbal tea is kind of more or less a benefit in all of itself. It's not going to add calories to your count.
Very few herbalists will tell you, or naturopaths will tell you that we don't like herbal tea, right? We're all big fans of that.
Exactly.
But so this slide I love because there was a lot of research out there on the people who skipped breakfast, and the study showed that breakfast was horrible, and the ideal breakfast was within a half hour of you waking up, right? And most of this was brought to us by General Mills and Kellogg, I think, were the two major funders.
Yeah, there's always a motive behind the research. It definitely, okay, so like skipping breakfast, I want to put an important note on this one. I understand like if you skip breakfast, you're more likely to exercise less because you don't have the energy and make poor choices after you finish fasting or getting out of that fasting state. But the ideal breakfast is just to break a fast. So you just break down the word breakfast, break fast. And so ideally it's what you're eating for your first meal of the day, which in most time it could be breakfast, but you could have dinner or breakfast, lunch or brunch, so there's a lot of play on words there. So I think it's an important thing. So basically breaking the fast, you're going to kind of get into the food of what to focus on. And it's super important on when you break the fast to have these nutrients, is because this is what's going to help facilitate the metabolic processes that just happened trying to repair and rejuvenate. Proteins, you're going to at least want 30 grams of proteins just to increase muscle production and metabolism, and then a lot of polyphenol rich foods, which is perfect prebiotic foods. So basically a big healthy green salad, or a bunch of vegetables, root vegetables, green vegetables, a nice protein, avocados, and healthy fats is with the avocado. So having the healthy fats is really going to help keep that sustainable of being hungry again. So
Absolutely. So I'll tell you guys what I put in mine, because this sounds like not practical always to prep in the morning. So I do a protein shake, that I do protein powder, about 30 grams of protein. Then polyphenol rich foods are basically greens and fruits and vegetables, right? Like all the colorful, beautiful stuff that you see that you should be eating. So I will either do frozen version of that and make a smoothie, or if I'm on the run, I do a powdered greens and I throw that in, and then I put omega-3s and MCT oil into my shake, and collagen, because I'm over 40. And then that all goes into a shake, and I bring that with me, and that's what I break my fast with. And so that's that whole thing, quick and dirty, probably not ready for Pinterest, but it is what you need to get to get you in a good spot that way.
Gets the job done. Yeah. I mean, you could even meal prep, like there's boiled eggs, you could prep chicken, you could prep a meat, and just throw everything in together and take it to go. So basically the idea behind the nutritional lifestyle, the effective way of intermittent fasting is basically eating mainly whole foods, decreasing the processed foods, avoiding added sugar, watching, the portion size, and then by all means exercise, sleep, and stress reduction. So these is what I'm saying. It's a twofold kind of, where intermittent fasting is not only the time windows, but it's also generated towards the healthy nutrition and lifestyle effect of it as well. What it's nice about intermittent fasting is you could still reap the benefits of it without calorie counting, without weighing your food, and then eliminating any majority of the food groups, which is something I was saying before, where, if you're first just starting out and you're not really sure how to go about it, really taking everything that you're eating in one day and just shortening the window, and over time eliminating, those processed foods that you might be eating, those extra sugars that are going to be harsh on your body, and just keeping it in that shorter window, and you'll get to the same goal.
Awesome.
Yeah. So basically the main difference between intermittent fasting and other eating is just the timing of the meal. This side is interesting because a lot of people will think like, well, if I fast all day and then I might feel really wired before I go to sleep, and it's basically the high carb. And this goes back to having that healthy, whole rounded protein, polyphenols, healthy fats in a meal. It's going to help you feel more regulated with your sugar. As we all know, carbs is like, carb loading, we're not running a marathon the next day. So we don't really need to have that much carbs at night. And it just helps. It's more recommended. And so a lot of times if you do feel wired, there's also the sleeping, your sleep hygiene. What are you doing before bed? Are you, can we add in breathing exercises? Can we add in gentle yoga? Something calming before bed will help reduce the hunger and also any kind of wiredness from carbs. So
I know. I love all the cartoons that were like great for all of this. Yeah.
So basically metabolic flexibility with fasting, your body's going to learn how to switch from glucose to burning fat, and it's going to take over time, but eventually your body's going to know, okay, like I'm in a fasting state, like let's get going with burning fat and energy production, and you'll eventually start to feel more energized and less fatigued just by conserving it. Evidence basically, it shows that, it could help with that stubborn plateau of weight loss, what happens when we're like getting into a diet and starting to go from there. And then this is going back even with working out and athletic performing, it could help facilitate like better repair and breakdown, and using those keto bodies to help repair after athletic performances.
Absolutely. And it's just such an easy thing to start playing with, because again, you're not necessarily changing what you're eating, just when.
Mhm.
And you think about when we're talking about exercise, a lot of times they'll say like high intensity interval, right? Like changing is very therapeutic for our body, not doing routine when it comes to exercise or anything else. So it's the same thing with diet, is to have these changes where like shifts in amount of calories that we're taking in at certain times of the day can really be helpful for all of us.
Yeah.
There's a quick question, I'll answer it for everybody. Yes, we will definitely make this PowerPoint available for everyone, and we are filming this. I think that was mentioned when you guys log in, so there will be availability for all of this for you guys.
Mhm. So basically the benefits of fasting, there's a lot of them. It's it's an anti-inflammatory response. There's going to be just positive changes in your gut microbiome, your immune cells and the response to it. There's research showing that it could help decrease the risk of cancers. It reduces your insulin levels, blood pressure, oxidative stress, which goes into benefit of your cellular repair when it comes to fasting. And it just has a number of benefits, even switching certain genes that might turn on with the promotion of food that is going to help kind of equilibrium and balance your body. Okay, so lifestyle benefits is going to be the same thing, increase your mental focus, your productivity, energy. These things you're going to feel better, right at first, starting to get into it, you might have that kind of period of time where you might feel more fatigued, but after a while you get used to it and you really start to kind of utilize that energy that, you would be taking up eating or like digesting your food. So you're going to be able to shift your energy into a different way, and also your mental kind of shift towards how you approach food, which is, I think, a big goal of intermittent fasting, of how is my relationship with food and how can I improve that relationship to food. So I think that there's a big value in that. I don't know
Yeah, I
if you have
love that. I mean, so you think about like meal prepping for your family for the week. For example, you've got to go to the grocery store, I know what's the Taco Tuesday for everyone else at their house or whatever, like, like prepping everyone and making food and that kind of stuff. And then adding that, like, there all the meals of the day, making sure everyone's got everything they need. It's a lot of work. And think about that mental energy. It's that same amount or more for your body. It takes a tremendous amount of calories and energy for your body to take something from the environment and assimilate it into your cells. Think about how that is a tremendous amount of work.
Yeah.
And it is taxing on your GI tract, it's taxing on your microbiome. It puts a lot of stress in a lot of different ways on the body, obviously necessary for life, but also a lot of work. And so creating rest, you know what I mean? Like, this is classic, like Europeans have 6 weeks off of vacation. Like, this is that diet for our bodies, where it's like taking a chunk of time to not focus on bringing more in. And just by cutting out that one meal a day, I don't have to think about breakfast. I make my shake and I'm ready to go. But also, it allows this time for your body and your gut rest. And what we've found when it comes to your microbiome and the health of your GI tract is amazing. Like, your GI tract and your microbiome, when we say microbiome, we mean the probiotics, the good bacteria that live in our GI tract, which turns out we have as many bugs in our GI tract as we do cells in our bodies. So that's a huge shift for our bodies, to let those bacteria live and calm down in a good way. And so these are some of the studies, some of the conditions that we're finding research that it's beneficial for. I don't know if you want to talk to any particular ones, Dr. Holland, or not, but go for it.
Well, I know that there's a lot of research on a lot of these clinical applications on how it helps utilize it. It goes back to the same metabolic kind of um, state of these clinical applications.
Mhm.
You know, a lot of them are intertwined with each other, and just like that whole process of your body working really hard when it doesn't need to. There's a lot of, you know, going into the gut health of the gut flora and the gut microbiome. Our gut microbe is linked to a lot of immune cells and how it reacts to our body, and what, like basically what it's gonna cause an effect of fasting. So I think that these kind of show for themselves where fasting is going to really help just
For
lower that
sure,
ability
for
and
sure.
heal your body.
I want to break down a couple of these terms for people because they're big words that I didn't know until med school.
Yeah.
Polycystic ovarian syndrome, you guys saw ovary in there and probably grabbed it, but like basically that's a condition when your hormones are connected to your blood sugar in a lot of ways. So blood sugar conditions of any kind really can benefit again with the help of a physician using intermittent fasting. Obviously, we're going to see it benefit diabetes and weight gain or weight loss. So when it comes to that, mitochondrial dysfunction, your mitochondria are the battery packs that give your cells energy on a very basic level of what the building blocks are that make up you. Your cells have in them little AA batteries called mitochondria, and they make your energy. And a lot of things can throw those off, and a lot of things can rejuvenate them. And what we're finding is that taking breaks from food, like fasting, can help rejuvenate them. So that's just an interesting thing. Again, when people plateau with weight loss, that's another one, obviously. And there's a lot of interesting research on gut rest, we call it, and your microbiome and your good bacteria healing from that gut rest. So super interesting research coming out.
Yeah.
Um, I don't want, you can, I'll let you field this one.
Oh, the weight weight management. Okay,
Yeah.
so research definitely showed like fasting helps reduce fat mass and water weight. It's just, you know, more than just lower calorie diets, cleanses, detox, cleanses and detox have their place in medicine, but sometimes lower calorie counts lead to bad food habits, sometimes not eating enough, nutrients deficiency. So I think by fasting and having that window of eating and resting, you're really going to utilize the same amount of calories that you would in one day. You're just shortening the window. It could cut, your waist circumference over a longer period, like 24 weeks. There's tons of research on this, and it's a more sustainable kind of weight management or weight loss solution than just decreasing your calorie count, especially because you're going to go into a dip when you take away something without replacing more proteins or more healthy fats. Then you often kind of will fall off and then crave that sugar because you're not getting enough kind of calories. So that's where a really important distinction between intermittent fasting and calorie restriction.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key with weight management is sustainable and not to yo-yo diet. We've pretty much shown that like the more you lose weight, gain weight, the harder it is to lose weight the next time. And the thing I love about intermittent fasting is it's pretty sustainable. If you want to skip breakfast, you can. If you want to go a day or two a week, that seems reasonable to cut out. That's pretty doable, and it's less invasive than you know, avoiding XYZ indefinitely, which may not be sustainable for you.
Mm-hmm. So the exercise and fasting is going to be, hand in hand. Obviously, exercise, we all know that it's very important. It should be done daily. Just a daily moving your body is going to be substantial to our health. And it's interesting because they looked at a lot of studies that kind of even a low intensity exercise with a less fit individual tends to enhance lipopolysis, was basically the breakdown of your fat cells. And then even in high intensity endurances athletes. So I'm not saying that not to do high intensity exercises, but sometimes even with fasting, you should tend to do lower ones, or it depends on your body, kind of going from there. But what they're looking at is not so much like what you should or shouldn't do, it's what your body reacts to doing that. The benefits of fasting with your body and helping clearing and lowering your insulin levels and your sugar levels, where you're able to then work off of these pathways that are more beneficial than not doing it.
Absolutely. Like, I think that like it's listening to your body again and meeting yourself where you're at. I mean, should all of us do high interval trainings at some point? Probably, but like, any exercise is better than no exercise.
Yeah.
And I also think that the point is that movement plus intermittent fasting, not even changing the amount of calories you're eating or the types of calories you're eating, can give you a lot of benefit. And that might be a great, easy place to start. Get yourself some wins that way, So quick question while we're going through this is, what was the average amount of calories to consume per day based off the Lee Gaines method? Lean Gaines, I never know how to pronounce that. I've only ever read it. But I think there has never been a recommendation of a calorie deficit. So it should still be based off your basal metabolic rate, correct? That's my understanding.
Yeah.
A lot of people fall short of it just because you are consolidating and it just feels like a lot of food in that window, but you don't have to reduce your number of calories, to my understanding.
No, it is not. I think there's more benefit actually. I think I came across one study that said that over time, you'll see more benefits from not lowering your calorie count and intermittent fasting, because it's more sustainable than lowering your calorie count and intermittent fasting at the same time. So I think keeping that.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to push it forward.
No, it's okay. Yep, go ahead.
Really quick question was like, what's considered low intensity exercise? I would say that's like walking or stuff that you're not really pushing your heart rate too high, correct?
Yep. I mean, like even water aerobics where you're not like going intensely hard, you're not running a marathon. I mean, higher interval training is really that, 30 seconds, 50 seconds of super intensity, 10 seconds of rest, So I think just kind of having that mindful, lower walking upstairs, yoga, Tai Chi, even light rope, even if you're running, you could still be kind of at a lower intensity.
Yeah, I definitely have had those moments where I've done lower intensity running, but yes. So you're not getting your heart rate up there, but you're moving your body and you're getting in your body, and that's key. So there could be like gentle yoga versus hot yoga would be like low intensity versus high. And the question is it harder for women to lose weight than on intermittent fasting than men? One of my least favorite things in life is seeing a couple try to lose weight together when they're a heterosexual couple, because the men always lose weight quicker than the men or the women. It's a frustrating thing in life. We are different creatures and we have to honor that there may be different. I have seen women have a great impact with intermittent fasting. There is some there's like, I don't know if we touch on it in this, we can talk about it at the end, that like hormones can play a role in potentially. There's some light research on that at this point, but that women still get a tremendous amount of benefit from intermittent fasting, and don't compare yourself to your male friends or partners.
Yeah. I agree. Sometimes, because women run off of different, of more of a changeable hormones than men do. And so I think that change is really what will determine intermittent fasting on whether it has more benefit to us or not, so I think it change. So if you feel really, lazy right before your period, you're super hungry, try to listen to your body, be kind to yourself, and give it fuel. So kind of doing it that way.
For sure. Yeah, hormones do play a big role in listening to your body. Again, intuitive eating is really where I kind of land with all of it. And there is a quick question of like, does age play a factor over 50? So again, there is we're at some point we are breaking down more than we're building up. And so we're going to want to make sure we're really promoting muscle building with proteins and things like that. At some point it does become harder to lose weight. They've shown that. And so if you're doing it as a goal of weight loss, after menopause becomes harder for sure. It doesn't mean that you don't get a lot of benefit from intermittent fasting, and you can still have that for sure. I think this jumps into the slides we're going to jump into next is kind of the oncology piece of things, right?
Yeah, and it's
So,
actually what happens to a lot of the cells during intermittent fasting, which is what is kind of the benefit of it. It's like your cleanup crew. It's like the nightly cleaning people that come in and clean everything up in your body, and you start fresh.
So I really like my analogy of like, if you've got nothing else in the freezer, but you've got that old crusty thing of Ben and Jerry's that's got like the ice crystals on it, and you're like, I don't know, that's all I got, but I gotta just have it. So you're gonna clean out you're gonna clean out the freezer. You're gonna clean out the like bits of stuff that doesn't have anything left in it. So the cells that are damaged DNA, broken down stuff that's in your body. Once you get past that, typically the 14-hour window, you're gonna have some level of autophagy where your cells are going to become food, and that will clean up a lot of the debris and keep your cells a lot healthier in your body. And autophagy is something that really prevents a lot of disease and keeps you healthier and younger, and is associated with a lot of great things. So again,
this is cleaning your freezer. We
can clean
your
all the ice crystals, Ben and Jerry's in the back of your freezer. It cleans all that out so it's not there anymore, right? We don't want that Ben and Jerry's there anymore.
Yeah.
So clean it out, get all those cells clean. And autophagy is a pretty cool thing that intermittent fasting promotes. This is like your cells, as soon as they realize there's no glycogen left, they start cleaning up the junk in your interstitium. Yep. So this can play a huge role when it comes to cancer. There's a lot of different components with this, both during treatment, radiation, and prevention. Again, highly recommend you do this when it comes to cancer. You definitely have to have some clinicians on board with this, but there's some research showing that it can help you tolerate chemotherapy better. It can help you tolerate radiation better. And again, it's going to help reduce the risk of damaged DNA to your good cells while upregulating the damage to cancer cells. Cancer is very interesting in lots of ways. It works different than the rest of the cells in your body. And one thing is it's very sensitive to oxidative stress, and it's very metabolically active. And so when you starve it in the face of medication that will then kill it, it's like a twofold process that can really upregulate your treatment. So it's something you should definitely talk about with your clinicians, but it's can be very therapeutic. Again, there's some great research that it can be very beneficial to
Hi, Rustin.
I think somebody's not on mute.
So it can be very beneficial to supporting your immune system, and to helping clear out cells that need to die off, that need to leave, and also stimulating your stem cells, those good healthy cells that kind of build everything in your body. So again, these are really good signs that on a very core level, from cancer to weight loss, that intermittent fasting can really help. With it, there's a quick question about if getting headaches or side effects when you're intermittent fasting. The question is, could it be from dehydration? Certainly could be your blood sugar needs to get checked more, or there could be other components playing along. If you're going into, I don't know what kind of fasting you're doing, if you're going into like a longer fast and you need more fats to help promote ketosis or other things to help kind of get you through that, that might be another thing to look at. That's definitely something to connect with your doctor about. The Women's Healthy, the Health Initiative studies, do you want to talk about these, Dr. Holland? Do you want me to touch base on them?
Yeah, this one was a particular study that happened where they kind of measured 2,413 women around this age of 52, and they looked at the basically they looked at their blood sugar and their risk of cancer, or like the significantly decreasing cancer risk. And they found that an average period of over 13 hours of fasting was so beneficial to decreasing the risk of breast cancer, just because it lowers the A1C, it lowers the insulin resistance, it promotes your immune system for catching any kind of tumor cells to begin with. So I think this was an important study that they found a nice correlation between breast cancer and fasting. And I think this was a pretty significant study that they found.
And this data pool was back when like fasting wasn't quite as popular. So that's some pretty interesting research for sure.
Yeah. And this basically goes back into the metabolic. This is if your fasting blood sugar and your insulin. This is a lot of people, have kind of struggle with their sugar and their insulin levels. And this is where it's really going to play in of finding that fine line of helping with your insulin and causing it to not go in overload when it's trying to break down all this glucose that you're kind of consuming. And so I think it's really beneficial for kind of helping your metabolic state. So that's what it's now been researched a lot. Intermittent fasting has been researched a lot. So the metabolic state is definitely going to be a really big win for intermittent fasting.
Just to break down really quickly for people what insulin resistance is.
Yeah.
When you eat sugar, your body makes a hormone named insulin that some people take as an injection when their blood sugar when their body no longer makes enough to control that blood sugar, so you don't just have huge amounts in your bloodstream. And what insulin resistance is your body no longer recognizes insulin as quickly. It gets used to it. It's kind of like mommy deafness. Like if I tell my kids to do something and they don't listen, they're just kind of like, yeah. That's what your cells can do to insulin. And so that is they call it like pre-diabetes. It's like the beginning signs of, if your kids aren't listening now, it's going to be a problem in a few years. Yeah. And so insulin resistance is definitely a precursor to a lot of concerns. And if we can just get that doing fasting and letting your body get some gut rest and some blood sugar regulation, and then being able to recognize insulin and not be as resistant to it. If you don't have to yell at your kids 16 hours a day, these analogies are great, aren't they, guys? Cleaning out my fridge from Ben & Jerry's and yelling at my children. But then if you only bring up it once to your kids, they probably listen, right? So that's the metaphor I'm going to use with you guys. So essentially, insulin resistance is something we don't want, and the more our body listens to insulin, the better.
Yeah.
And our brains love sugar and love glucose, and so are really responsive to intermittent fasting, right?
Yeah, it will benefit because the brain needs a certain level of glucose to run, and it's important for that factor. But when it's flooded with glucose, it's going to cause a lot of inflammation, and it's going to cause a lot of lifestyle changes, fogginess, even. So I think that the fasting part of it helps kind of regulate your brain, and because it knows how to work. So you just don't need to flood it with all this glucose. So
for sure. I mean, and some people may have heard that like even things like Alzheimer's may be considered another type of diabetes because again, when we make our brains couch potatoes and all they're doing there is shoveling sugar in their mouth, it just gets kind of like sloppy and not as effective. And when we get those, like, again, changes in kind of like flexing, having to have less sugar, and it responds really well to that. So there's some great research that I know we mentioned in here, brain-derived neurotropic factor. Essentially, your brain does have some ability to regenerate and recover from stressors, and fasting stimulates that.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And longevity. I mean, everyone wants to know the secret to living a longer life. This is just going to make it a little bit more healthier of the time that we are here. So I think intermittent fasting can expand it just because of the, calorie, like, just because of like letting your body rejuvenate and repair. I think that's going to be the lifelong lesson of just letting your body kind of do its magic and not always trying to keep it higher levels of glucose with it.
absolutely. I first remember learning about oxidative stress and antioxidants. I don't remember, you remember it, but I remember it from oil of Olay commercials in the 80s, the early 90s. And oxidative stress is the reason why you use oil of Olay. I'm not getting sponsored by them, but like the concept of like, it's damaging to tissue to have oxidative stress. Basically, oxygen likes to be in twos, and when they're in ones, it does a lot of damage to cells and tissue. And so that's what oxidative stress is. And so intermittent fasting, getting breaks from processing your environment and processing food, allows you to reduce your oxidative stress. And that will, in and of itself, reduce your trauma to your body, essentially, and improve your longevity. Additionally, they've shown, like, right, like, one of the only things that's been associated with longevity and lengthening your telomeres in your cells, the parts that are like associated with longevity, is less calories. And innately, it's easier to cut back a little bit on calories, at least eat like appropriate amount of calories by eating a smaller window.
Yeah.
So we did a lot of the whys. So we should talk about sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was adding when we're talking about, not calorie restricting, but the thing is, we have to also look at how many calories that we actually are intaking, which, but finding that metabolic rate is going to be really important, and not going too much above and too much less. So that's something also your healthcare provider can help you figure out your calorie count, or even nutritionists can help you with that too. And so adding that is going to be really important. Yeah. Get those oxidative stressors out. All right. So how to start? This is going to be the simplest. Is most people begin by breaking their fast 4 to 6 hours after they wake up. And this is what we said, just prolonging. So even if you wake up, you work out, and you wait a little bit and then eat, this is something where you could start. And then it's easier to fall asleep if you're satisfied at night, like we were saying, the sugar, regulating your metabolism that way. And then eventually, you're gonna just stumble upon 16 hours and you're like, oh, I haven't eaten. Okay, let me eat. This is my window, open opportunity, and you go from there. So, and then you may be thinking, I'm going to be starving. But however, fasting over time, is majority of sleep. And I chose this picture because I have a cat who always thinks that he's starving. So basically, you're not starving. It's okay. You just go to sleep, and then you wake up and you prolong it a little bit. So other concerns, basically, low energy, which we talked about already, could be it's going to be temporary. Obviously, if you're having prolonged fatigue, then consulting with somebody, there could be something else going on. So kind of going, you're based off of that. I don't know if you have anything to add.
I found a lot of people have concerns around hypoglycemia. If I get hangry at points. I've found that, like, if you're doing it for breakfast, you don't get the hangry that you would be getting if you ate breakfast and then are crashing around 2 p.m. and you need something kind of energy. So definitely work again with a clinician. There's other ways to support it, hydrate a lot, but there's oftentimes people do well when they're closing the window and not doing breakfast, no food, dinner. That's not going to be a fast. You're not going to get that therapeutic window you want. You want to make sure you're getting that like larger window. And honestly, it is easier sleeping through not eating half of it, you know?
Yeah.
So I agree with you. I haven't honestly seen much of the lower energy levels. I've seen a lot of people say the brain fog clears when they're not eating as much.
Yeah.
So,
And some people have more energy, you know, like,
sure.
like just ready to go. And you might first wake up and you're like, oh, I'm kind of hungry, you know, but then you just push through and you're like, okay, oh, now I'm hungry. And later it's, 2 o'clock, 11 o'clock. And, and like I said, the cycling this, so it doesn't have to be an everyday thing. It could be 3 times a week, 2 times a week, 1 time a week, as you start to build up. This routine is just basically like a sample day, lunch around 11, eating a substantial meal. That way, you get all your protein, your healthy fats, your polyphenols, your fruits and vegetables, and then finish eating by 7 p.m. You drink tea, lots of water, plenty of protein, making sure your vegetables are your main source of carbs, kind of avoiding those starchy carbs, the processed carbs, things like that. And then a good portion of healthy fats, because that's going to also aid in the rejuvenation of the body.
So again, there's important parts that good fats help feed the ketones in your body. And so that's really a key important part. And I found that like people who are craving a lot of carbs in the evening often didn't get enough fat earlier in the day.
Yeah.
The other thing is that it's dangerous in the evening to snack anyways. It's dark, it's New England, everything's closed at 8, and there's Netflix, and it's easy to want something else or whatever it is. This is the time that's be like, you know what, I'm gonna have a cup of tea. I'm sick of my intermittent fasting, and this is what I'm gonna do for myself. I had my pasta, whatever I had earlier. You're not even having to restrict as much,
Yeah.
So I think that it would be it's important to get a good amount of protein to feed those muscles and everything. But this is an easy routine to fall into. And you can even start, like, let's say you usually have breakfast at 9 a.m. Push it to 9:30. Just push it off a half hour and then do it another half hour, and then or 15 minutes, and keep doing it in 15-minute increments until you get to that window of an 8-hour meal day, and then that can really do a lot of benefit.
Yeah, slow but sure.
Yes. What are good sources of protein for vegans or vegetarians? We'll say vegans because there's, lots of stuff that the vegetarians can do, eggs and dairy and those type of things. So vegans, there's so many lentil pastas out there and that type of stuff. There's a lot of nuts and seeds. I do think that protein shakes are a wonderful way to get a lot of protein in. So I am a big fan of those too. How about you, Dr. Holland? Do you have any favorites for vegans?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, because you need more kind of proteins even with vegans, because you're not getting a lot of it. You'll eat a piece of chicken and you'll get a substantial amount of protein versus eating a handful of nuts. You might not get the same amount. So like really making sure that your protein is up there. It has a lot to do with muscle building and and metabolism. So I think avocados, those are the healthy fats, but proteins, nuts, beans, legumes. Yeah.
Those are good ones. I think there's a lot of I was vegan for probably 15 years, and it's just something you have to be slightly more mindful of, but are certainly able to do.
Yeah.
You just have to put a little more intention behind it than someone who's just going to slam a hamburger. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, I think it's very commendable to be vegan. Just you have to like aim for those other whole food sources of protein. That's seeds and beans are your new best friends. So can you shift that time frame? Does it have to be 11 to 7? Could you do 1 to 9 and then go to sleep around 11?
Yeah.
Certainly you don't want to go to bed with a full stomach, because again, you're metabolism and your acid, like, structurally you're laying down, like making sure food's processing, and having gravity help you is certainly a great thing. But if you tolerate it well and you find that that works for you, I think that that's a fine thing to do to 1 to 9 p.m. and you go to bed a little bit later.
Yeah.
I think it's certainly fine. That 8-hour window is the magic for that one type of fasting. So I don't think it matters when. Would you agree, Dr.?
I agree. And there's also something to be said, like, for second shift workers or third shift workers, where they're really going to have that window of wakeness, later in the evening. So kind of finding that happy medium of when you're having your dinner and when you're kind of cutting off for fasting is going to be something that is a personal conducting experiment, where you can eat where you could have that fasting window and not feel starved or time restricted from work and stuff like that. Just thinking
Absolutely.
of
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but I will say clinically, having worked with people in fasting over the years, like just doing this, I've seen people be like, I lost 20 pounds. Just closing the window of time, skipping breakfast, I lost 20 pounds. That's awesome and easy. And think about what it's doing for your cells, for your cancer risk, for your diabetes risk. There's so many different benefits from that perspective that it's definitely something to, explore for sure.
I'll have to admit that I was definitely, before learning about it and kind of diving into it, I was like, I'm not fasting. There's no way. Like that's terrible. I shouldn't fast. I'm like, oh, I have so much more energy. I'm sleeping better. I feel better. And then I realized that I used to fast all the time, where I would like forget to eat. And I'm like, oh, so it's something where, it takes time. It's a recognizing, it's honoring our system. It's kind of utilizing, what we can. We have control over our bodies in that sense of what we put in our mouth.
Yes, for sure. And I do think that, again, listening to your body, intuitive eating, if you wake up in the morning and you're hungry, eat. If you're that day. And then the next day, the cool thing with intermittent fasting is every day can be different. And that's not a bad thing at all. Touching base on this other routine, a lot of people who fast are big fans of bulletproof coffee, which is using coconut oil or medium chain triglycerides in your coffee or herbal tea. And I highly recommend using a frother or a blender, because you got to really get it in there, else it's just oil on the top of your drink. But that can, again, those medium chain triglycerides are going to feed ketosis. And I feel like it gives you a little kickstart for your brain. It makes your coffee taste like a latte, and is another way to stay in fasting, but give yourself a little snack in the morning to kind of kickstart that fasting process.
Yeah. And it's actually medium chain fatty acid, the medium chain triglycerides are better absorbed in your body. So it's less work for your body to even get them in. So they have high benefits.
For sure. Pitfalls. Let's talk about pitfalls. I love your post, by the way. I love the picture. There was one study. Yeah, there was one study that I know of that basically showed, like, if you overeat at dinner, you negate the benefits of fasting. So that is definitely a pitfall you got to be mindful of.
Yeah, it's something where you have better chances at weight loss, kind of keeping a regular kind of snack, and it goes back to that overconsumption as well. So
yeah. And I apologize. I was looking so much at pictures with us talking that I missed a couple of questions. So I just want to make sure I address them with everybody. I love all these questions, by the way. It makes it dynamic, and I know you guys are all here listening, which is fun. When are we going to see the benefits of weight loss when it comes to intermittent fasting? Like, basically, essentially, how quickly should we know that this is working? Do you have to do it for 3 weeks before you see a benefit or not? Clinically, I would say I've seen you see some benefit fairly quickly within like 3 to 4 weeks, probably sooner than that. But I think it's one of those things where I don't like rushing weight loss personally. if you lose weight quick, it's definitely one of those things where you have to wonder, is this going to be a sustainable thing? So I think if you start to like slowly see it notch down, that's the healthiest situation. So I wouldn't want to see anyone lose more than like 2 to 3 pounds a week max, or I'd be kind of concerned.
Yeah, I think there was a study back in the slides that over a 24-week period, they saw a decrease in waist circumference. Definitely, I 100% agree that weight loss should be a thing where it kind of goes down in slow increments. That way it's more sustainable. If you rise fast, you'll fall fast. So I think over time, and you're going to get benefit from intermittent fasting that you can't even see, it's not as tangible. So
fasting mimicking diets are a little different, and we've done those out of our office, which is like a 5-day low caloric fast type diet. It's still, you eat food, but you eat a lot less calories for 5 days. All of the doctors in our office did it, and we lost between, a lot of them shouldn't have lost anyway, but like between like 6 and 10 pounds in 5 days, but with this low caloric diet. And then you're supposed to do it for 5 days and then sustain. Fasting mimicking diets, we kind of touched on, I feel like we should bring up, you do less calories for a few days and then you maintain it for like 3 weeks and then you do it again, a little bit different. So I would say like you wouldn't want to lose more than like 5 pounds over a 3-4 week period at a time to make it sustainable. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
As far as celery juice breaking the fast, I have seen celery juice kind of sabotage people's keto before, because there's not a lot of carbs, but it must be enough that it's sabotaged people's keto before. So it's just, if it's too many carbs, it's gonna like undo that clearing of glycogen stores.
Yeah.
Would you agree? I mean,
Yeah, I think so. I think celery juice might throw it off. You could eat celery juice definitely in your window of eating. So
yeah.
yeah.
Or break the
That-
fast with that. I think breaking it
Yeah.
with that makes sense for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That would be a good way.
Yeah, this is a great app. We don't get any commissions off of any of this
No,
stuff.
it was just there. Figured I'd leave it in there.
I love that. Yeah.
And then this goes back, it's not for everyone. I think really having conversation with your healthcare provider about fasting is going to be really important. Going back to the disclaimer that you spoke about earlier, this is an idea to really connect yourself better with food and your body, and really kind of bringing back and you taking charge of your own health. So I think that if you feel like you're not in your own hands, if your health's not in your own hands and you really want to take it back, then work with a team member by doing this.
Yeah. I love that. And you're right. At the end of the day, I know weight loss is a goal for a lot of people, but essentially what that is I want to feel better in my body.
Yeah.
And I think you can do that with focusing on building, because you don't want to lose muscle. You don't want to you want your bones to be healthy, you want your muscles to be healthy, you want to feel good in your body. And when that's really your goal with weight loss, it's about like creating a healthy relationship with how you're sustaining your body.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. So,
awesome.
Having that and, like Dr. Young, you had mentioned a number of times, like, it's intuitive eating. If your body tells you that it's starving, you need, I'm dizzy, I need to eat, then eat, please. There's the next day where you could work up that window of 30 minutes going up and holding off on food. It's something where this is a piecemeal, it's an individualized kind of treatment. And yeah, I think it's going to be really good.
But I do think it is a great way to start exploring your relationships with food and how you feel about food and why you're eating, and also listening to your body, and kind of, instead of, again, I'm going to take us off the question screen. When you guys get this though, I will say great job with all the references, but so like it is a great way for us to connect to our bodies and listen to it. And it's very different than when I was in school, where it was like everyone should be having a protein before they go to work and then having a snack 2 hours later. This is like, no, listen to your body. What do you feel like? If you want celery juice after your workout, then girl, do it, man. Like that's
Go
probably
for
what your
it.
body needs. Exactly. Exactly. That's where medicine's going, and I love that. So that's why we were really excited about this topic for sure.
Yeah, I think it was good.
So I know we're a little over time, and thank you all for sitting in with this and listening with us. Feel free to throw any other questions in the chat. Really grateful for everyone spending time with us tonight and talking all things not eating.
Yeah. I know.
Yes, and I want to thank Dr. Young and Dr. Holland for the presentation. It was very informative, and I think in the long run, it's not as difficult as it sounds when you first hear of it. Like you say, listen to your body and eat when it tells you it's hungry.
For sure. For sure. Well, if anyone has any other questions, Chantel will probably can send out the PowerPoint, and we are always available for questions. And, there's a survey at the end. Please feel free to fill it out and give us some feedback, other topics you want, how you felt about this, what else we can do for you guys. We all love giving these kind of presentations, and I appreciate your time tonight. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. It was an amazing opportunity. I'm so happy to be able to come and speak with you and have a nice conversation about something that's really beneficial.
Absolutely. As one question comes in, I'll answer it. So can you have sweetener in your coffee in the morning if you're going to intermittent fast? And I will say that the sweeteners you can have cannot have carbohydrates in them, or that will kind of undo your goals. So you're looking at, again, you could have an MCT oil or coconut oil and froth it with one of those little mixers.
Yeah.
You could have monk's fruit or stevia are the other two options. To a lesser extent, I would also say xylitol. I would not my favorite pick, but stevia and monk's fruit are great sweeteners you could put as well into your coffee if you need it, if you prefer a little sweet. So great questions, awesome questions, really making it dynamic. Geez, the questions were great, weren't they, Dr. Holland? It kept us like really on our toes, so I love it.
I like the interaction like that.
Yes. All right, so everyone, let's all skip breakfast together tomorrow. Kidding.
Yeah, let's eat at 11.
I know. Everyone really enjoy your lunch tomorrow and have a wonderful night.
Yeah. Bye-bye, everybody.